Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Macabre, and welcome back to my movie library. Here we are again. It's been about a week, I believe, since I posted my last What You Watching video. And yeah, so in a week, I've been able to take quite a few movies off the unwatched pile. And I'm going to show you what all I watched. Some movies were good, some definitely not so much. But yeah, I watched some pretty interesting things, and let's go ahead and just wanted to share with you guys, kind of let you know what I've been watching. So, first up, I had this movie in my collection for quite a while. Um, yeah, um, got to be honest, did not think much of it, and I don't think I'm going to be hanging on to this movie. This is Bloodlust Zombies with Alexis Texas. I mean, granted, it's like she does give you some really nice eye candy in the movie, but this movie is really, really bad. It's trying, it's a zombie comedy. It's trying really, really hard to, trying to be funny. Just this movie just did not do it for me. The special effects looked really horrible. You see somebody like, there's a lot of like CGI blood and stuff in here, and like the parts where they do using like practical effects, the blood looks more like, I don't know, like watermelon Kool-Aid or something like that. It looked, it didn't look anything at all like blood. You know, just I like a good zombie comedy. Don't get me wrong, I do like a good one. I could sit here and go through a list, but I don't like it when a movie is trying really, really hard to be funny. And in this case too, it's like it doesn't take the premise very seriously, if at all. And, it's like usually what makes a good horror comedy work is if the comedy is maybe coming, from like, the dialogue between the characters or something like that, but the threat is very serious, and, the characters are taking the threat seriously. Don't make a joke out of the monsters, which that's pretty much what they did in this. And this just did not do it for me at all. The characters were really annoying, and yeah, one guy in there, like all he, every time he sees Alexis Texas's character, all he does is, and I get it, it's meant to be like a meta kind of play on her as an adult movie star and everything, but it's like every time he sees her, he's always like fantasizing about her in some kind of like porno scenario, with somebody, and just, I just could not do it. I gave this a fair shot, and truth be told, yeah, I'm not going to be holding on to this one. I could probably trade this in, get something else for it, but yeah, this movie just did not do it for me at all. It's trying way too hard to be funny, and it's just not. It's not clever or anything like that. It just didn't do anything for me. So yeah, so Bloodlust Zombies, not thrilled with it. This one's, take this down, trade this bad boy in, see if I can get something else for it. This one here, I just showed off in my video where I picked up some new stuff, and I gave this a watch, and actually I really enjoyed it. And didn't realize this was based on a comic book, but it is. And starring the late great Tawny Katine, we have Gwendolyn. This is actually a fun movie. It's like, I'm sure you get the idea. It's like, yeah, like Tawny Katine gives you some real cheesecake in this movie, which she does, but it was a fun adventure movie. It, had some good humor, some good scenes between the characters. I really liked her character, that she starts off as this kind of privileged, kind of rich girl, and she's looking for this rare species of butterfly, to help her father with his research and stuff. And then, she gets with this guide, and at first the two of them don't get along, but they start to fall in love. And, at first he's kind of being a jerk, and he's kind of mean to her and everything, but you see it's like, you get the idea that, like he's, put up a wall because, his heart's been broken, and even though he is falling in love with her, he's trying not to because he just doesn't want to get hurt again. You get some good character stuff like this, and, there are parts in the movie where, she has to fight, and, you could see, she has to fight, and she's not sure she can do it, and, she kind of questions herself, and, like she has to try to find the courage to believe in herself and everything. And it's like, man, this is the kind of good stuff. But, this is the kind of movie, though, like I said, it's fun, it's cheese and sleaze, but you know what? It's a good time. And, I really liked her character in the movie. And I like seeing her go from this, like I said, she starts off this kind of privileged, kind of pampered rich girl who, finds her strength and becomes a fighter. And she makes some mistakes along the way, but you know what? She ends up being a better person for it. And that's the kind of stuff you want. If you give female characters more arcs like this, it's like, yeah, nobody would ever complain about, having women heroes in movies, and, but I will say this though, it's like, yeah, if you're one of those kind of people, like you are so entrenched in everything that Marvel does and you believe you believe that they're right all the time. And, like you go, you accept everything that they're doing. This movie is going to piss you off. This movie is going to make you blow a gasket, like right now, every time a Marvel movie comes out, yes, it's going to be a female lead most, like 98% of the time. And usually it's like, she has no flaws. She doesn't make mistakes, all that kind of stuff. And she's going to be completely covered, like from the neck down, like no skin showing whatsoever. Well, clearly this is the opposite of that. And, if, you ever watch movies like Witchboard or Bachelor Party, movies back in the day that had Tawny Kitaen, and I mean no disrespect at all to Tawny Kitaen, may she rest in peace. And, even though the woman was breathtakingly gorgeous, she was a very good actress. She was genuinely good. Everything I've ever seen her in, I've always thought she was a good actress. Not just a beautiful woman, but a really good and talented actress. And I feel like, we lost her way too soon. But yeah, I mean, if you ever wanted to see lots of topless Tawny Kitaen, this is the movie to watch. Lots of topless women in this movie. It's funny that, you got the main guy that, who's in love with her character, and they find this underground city of, like women warriors and all this other kind of stuff. And basically all these women want to have sex with this guy. And the plan is basically for these women to pretty much bang him to death, So it's like, all this, like if you were, like if you're like, I wholeheartedly believe in everything that Marvel is doing, they can do no wrong and everything. Boy, this movie is going to, this is going to drive you up the wall. You are going to spit nails if you see this movie. But this was a fun movie with a good female lead, ends up being a great character and a fun hero to watch, good characters, good banter, some interesting chemistry. So even though this was a complete blind buy for me and I got this, it was $16, but I got it for $8 with store credit, but it was totally worth it. This was a fun movie and I'm definitely going to be watching this again. Not for the reasons you're thinking, okay? It is actually a good movie, although it does help. But yeah, Gwendolyn had a great time with this movie. Really enjoyed it. So this is fun. This one here, this is another one that I picked up in my recent pickup video. And yeah, typical Jess Franco sleaze fest. We have 2 female spies with flower panties. This here, it was okay, the story, what little bit of story there is basically about this, basically like almost like a human trafficking group they're kidnapping these beautiful women that are like models and stuff like that. And they kidnap them and they basically hypnotize these women into becoming sex slaves for these rich men who are paying them, to get these women for them. And, 2 of the characters, you got Lena Romay, who was, Jess Franco's. I don't know if they were really married, but I know that they were partners in real life. And Franco always considered Lena Romay to be his soulmate or his muse. And so, the thing is like, his career was actually pretty interesting because, Franco, started off making very mainstream films. He made like movies with Christopher Lee, like Fu Manchu movies and stuff like that. He started off making mainstream films, different kinds of films, horror films, spy films, I think he did some westerns, just all different kinds of movies. But the problem was as time went on, his movies, to be honest with you, his movies weren't particularly very good, you watch a lot of them and just kind of like, yeah, his movies are just kind of, and I think as time went on, like his movies weren't really returning much money. And then what ended up happening is like he would still get offers from producers. They would say, hey, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you, say, like $1 million, just for example. I'm going to give you like $1 million and I want you to go make this kind of movie. Well, the thing is like, Franco was so determined to make movies. He never wanted to do anything else. He was so determined to make movies. So, like, what would happen is they would give him that $1 million, but what he would do is he would take the budget, cut it in half, because the man always had a script in his back pocket for a movie that he was just itching to get done. So, he would cut the budget in half. He would go make the movie that they wanted. Then he would turn around and take the other half, make a movie that he wanted. And so you ended up with two, and he thought he was giving everybody a bargain and say, hey, man, I gave you 2 movies for the price of 1. But still, just the movies, especially when you're cutting the budget in half and everything else, it's like, yeah, and the fact that, he always tried to shoot these movies like ultra fast, not really paying attention, not paying attention to continuity or any of that kind of stuff. So a lot of the times the movies were really just not very good. And that ultimately, because he and Lena Romay decided they were not going to work day jobs. They wanted to make movies, and by God, that's what they were going to do. And they were going to do what they had to do to do it. And so, ultimately, they started making, porn, softcore porn. I'm pretty sure some of it was probably hardcore too, but ultimately, and that's how they finished out their careers. But it's like, that was the thing. They wanted to make movies. They didn't want to do anything else. So, and it's like, if Lena Romay had to go on camera and, gallivant around naked and stuff like that, so be it, as long as they kept making movies. And that's pretty much what you get here. Like, not terrible, but definitely not good. Like I said, it's very much a sleaze fest. I think you can kind of get that. But anyway, so I just got it from my Jess Franco collection. So anyway, like I said, not the worst thing he's ever done, but not really great by any stretch of the imagination either. But there you go. So 2 female spies with flower panties. Now, all of these are DVDs. A couple of these I think I'm going to keep. Most of these, I got to be honest, I'm pretty much just going to get rid of them. I hope you'll stick around for the rest of the video. You're like, well, you're saying they suck, so I'm not going to watch. This one here, it started off kind of promising, but really, it just kind of let me down. That is The Shadow Man. Started off as a pretty decent movie, but really, it just, for the most part, it's mostly just this kind of domestic drama, about this man and wife, and like, he cheated on her, and he's trying to, make it up to her, but she's having these dreams about this, she calls him the Hat Man. And so, and it's really mostly, it's just them arguing about their marriage, and he wants, he's talking about he wants to spend the rest of his life with her, and he wants to have, a family with her and all this other kind of stuff. And she's trying to figure out what this whole, mystery Hat Man is and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah, just a pretty underwhelming movie, and just, so yeah, it's more like mostly just, a domestic drama, just mostly these two just going back and forth about their marriage, and, it's not working and all this other kind of stuff. And so, yeah, this movie just didn't really do it for me, so I don't think I'm going to be hanging on to this one. This one here, this is one I thought I hadn't seen, but as I started watching, it turns out I did see it before. And it's not a bad little movie. This one is called Static. This one I think I'm going to go ahead and keep. Not a bad little flick. About the, it starts off as like a home invasion movie. You got Milo Ventimiglia. I'm sorry. And let's see, Sarah Shawnee. Sorry. Anyway, they're this married couple. They're in this, they're in this big house. He's a writer. She's an artist. They lost their son in an accident, like a drowning accident and stuff. And so the two of them are trying to reconcile their marriage and trying to move on and grieve and get past it and everything else. So they're trying to do that. And then Sarah Paxton, her character, comes up to their house, and she's saying like people are following her, and so they let her in, and then like these people wearing these masks, they start surrounding the house, and then the married couple are trying to fight them off, and so Yeah, and ends up going a couple of places you don't think it's going to go, but it was a decent film. Not a bad film at all. For 88 minutes, starts off a little slow, but it does pick up pretty quick. But yeah, just overall, a good movie. Good performances. I think everybody did a good job, and so. But anyway, so yeah, this one not too bad. Static, pretty decent little flick. This movie is a total gem. This movie is amazing. It's fantastic. Got this for $10 off of Amazon, and I swear to God, if you come across this, I promise you, get this and watch it. You will not regret it. This movie is awesome. This is a Shudder original. We have Getaway with Nick Frost. Nick Frost from Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and stuff. I can't wait to see that other new horror movie he's got coming out, Black Cab. I want to see that one. And not only, I showed this off in my recent pickup video too. Not only did Nick Frost star in the movie, he also wrote the script. And this movie is awesome. It is so good. It has some fun twists and turns. You may see it coming, you may not see it coming, but I do have to admit it took me off guard. I was totally enthralled with this movie the whole way through. And you might be, well, it's Nick Frost, so it's going to be a comedy. It's like, we all know that there's a difference, okay? There is such a thing that, as a horror film that has some humor in it, and there's such a thing as a comedy that has horror elements. This movie is a horror film with some comedy elements in it. There's a little bit of humor, but trust me, this is a horror movie, and you will be amazed at how much blood and gore actually comes in this film. The story is you got Nick Frost and his family. They go to this, they're going to this island. It definitely has almost like a Wicker Man vibe. They go to this island. They're trying to take a vacation. Nick Frost and his wife there. They're doing like couples counseling and stuff like that. And they figure this getaway, this vacation would be good for them. So they go to this island because they're kind of like this almost like cult that they do this festival where they're going to do this play and all this kind of stuff. So they want to go and see this play and kind of learn about this culture. Well, it turns out that they get to this island, and it turns out that the festival that they're talking about involves cannibalism. And so they're talking about they need to sacrifice people and eat their corpses, to fulfill this ritual for this thing that they're doing. And so obviously they're like, well, Nick Frost, being the big guy that he is and everything, well, he would make a perfect meal, wouldn't he? And not just him, but his family as well. And so, this movie is so good. It's like the whole time I'm guessing, I was like, what is going to happen? This movie kept me in it the whole way. Lots of great practical effects, blood and gore like you wouldn't believe. Everything else, I swear to God, $10, this is $10 well spent. The only thing I'm complaining about, I just wish it was on Blu-ray or 4K. I really would have loved to have this in a higher definition, but still, you know what? It's better than not having it at all, and I strongly urge, if any of you get a chance, pick this up. It's great. This one here is Serum. Not a bad little flick. Not the best thing I've ever seen. It's definitely very much in the style of like an old 50s or 60s creature feature in the vein of something like I Was a Teenage Frankenstein or I Was a Teenage Werewolf, something like that. You have these three members of this family, a father, an uncle, and a son. They're all doctors. Well, the father and the uncle are doctors. The son, he's going to be admitted into medical school. And it turns out, well, the uncle, he's something of a mad scientist. And he's trying to create this cure for cancer. And every time he tries to get close, something goes wrong, and there are side effects. You see him turning into like zombie-like creatures that go around having a taste for human flesh. Well, the young man, he gets hit by a car, and so they're trying to save his life. And so the uncle is like, well, I'm going to go ahead and give him this serum, and that'll be it. We'll keep him from dying. So then, of course, things don't go to plan. But not a bad movie, a very ultra low budget, but I mean, yeah, you've seen stuff like this before, so not a bad movie. So, Serum. Those one here, definitely an interesting kind of exorcism film, we have Scream at the Devil with Sherry Shattuck and Tony Todd, who unfortunately is only in the movie for a very little bit. Bill Obrist Jr., who's only really like a cameo. And who's the other one? I can't read the name. But anyway, yeah, it's about, man, a lot of like marital problem movies I've been watching here lately. Not intentional, that's just the way it planned out. Sherry Shattuck's character, she's suffering kind of like from a mental breakdown. She's supposed to be taking medication. She's seeing, things, demonic forces and everything surrounding her. And her husband, who cheated on her, he's trying to reconcile their marriage and buy her a nice house and trying to make up for what he did wrong and stuff like that. And, so it's definitely one of those movies you're kind of like, okay, is this, like a demonic entity movie, or is it more like a psychological horror film? So I'm not going to tell you. If you want to see, you can watch the movie, but it's okay. Just okay. Not great, not terrible, but just kind of don't really know if I'm going to be watching this movie again, to be honest with you. But so anyway, Scream at the Devil. This movie I hated. We have Shelter Island. This has Ali Sheedy, Patsy Kensick, Mimi Langland, Stephen Baldwin, and Chris Penn. The ending of this movie infuriated me, to be honest with you. Sorry, I'm going to go ahead and give away a couple of spoilers. In this movie, you got Ali Sheedy and Patsy Kensick. They play a lesbian couple. And turns out that Ali Sheedy's character, she's like a motivational speaker, but she's also like a pro golf player. So her character is very rich and all this kind of stuff. And it turns out basically that Patsy Kensick's character is, she basically gets in cahoots with, Chris Penn and Stephen Baldwin's character. Sorry, they're Baldwins, who cares? But anyway, so, she gets in cahoots with them, and they conjure up this plot to try to murder Ali Sheedy's character. So, her and this other girlfriend of hers can get all of Ali Sheedy's money. And in the end of the movie, they succeed. And Ali Sheedy's character is innocent. She doesn't deserve the terrible things that happens to her and everything else. And in the end, the ending just irritated me. I was just furious with it. And, this is definitely not one I'm going to be watching again. I will say, though, Patsy Kensick is easily one of the most beautiful women that's ever lived. That woman is just breathtakingly gorgeous. But, of course, say what you will, Ali Sheedy is no slouch either. Just did not like the movie. The ending just infuriated me. And, I'm just never going to watch this again either. So, another one I'm not going to watch again is Teeth and Blood. This is a vampire movie, and my God, this movie is so friggin' cliched. Like 20 minutes, I couldn't even get past 20 minutes of this movie. It is so cliched. It's, I feel like I've seen this kind of movie a zillion times. Nothing new about it. Just, oh my God, even the dialogue is so cliched, derivative, it's just, this cop hooks up with this guy is paired with this guy who's a vampire fighter and all this kind of stuff, and you get all the same dialogue. They start off as like enemies because the cop is like, "Yo, hey, chief, don't put me with no partner. I work alone," and all that. And so they fight in the beginning, but they become partners, and just on and on. I feel like I've seen this movie a zillion times and seen it done better and all this kind of stuff. I know somebody might be like, dude, this is by black filmmakers. You don't support black filmmakers. I do, but my God, I've seen way better movies than this. So, way better movies by black filmmakers than what I meant to say. So yeah, this one here is so cliche. I couldn't even get past 20 minutes because I felt like I've seen this movie 100 times already. So yeah, Teeth and Blood, not keeping this one. Skinned Alive. Oh boy, I'm not really interested in this one either. Started a few minutes into it and it's just, just so super duper ultra low budget. It's mostly following around this kind of incel loser guy who, going around, he's banging prostitutes, and at the same time, these women are being killed and all that kind of stuff. Or not, it's not the women being killed, it's the Johns that are being killed and everything else. And just like, oh man, just really boring. Takes way too long to get going. And just, the guy is just, most of the movies is him trying to get with the girls and they turn him down or they're not listening to him or whatever else. And it was boring. I just couldn't get into it. So, Excellent independent horror. Sorry, I've seen better. Yeah, it's got gore in it, but it's like, dude, there are way better movies I could watch if all I want was gore. So yeah, this one I'm not keeping. Last but not least, this one I thought was kind of decent, not too bad. This is Tell Me How I Die. Definitely has like a Final Destination kind of vibe to it. But, these kids go into this research facility and they're given this kind of medication and they start having hallucinations about, who is going to die and when are they going to die. And so they're all trying to figure out how they can go about like not having it happen. Like I said, very much a very Final Destination vibe, but yeah, not too much I could say about it. It was decent. It was okay. But yeah, that's about it. So that's pretty much everything I watched. Quite a few movies off the on-watch pile. Like I said, a couple of these I'm going to keep. A lot of these I'm going to get rid of. And that's it. So if anybody took the time to watch all this, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, would you please leave it a like? And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. That's it. Until next time, everybody, take care. Have a good night. See you all later.